The morning mist still clung to the white roses in my father Arthur's garden on the outskirts of Portland. I, Ethan Carter, knelt by the flower bed, carefully pruning each branch, trying to push away the pain of losing my father 2 weeks ago. But then, the sound of expensive leather shoes crunching on the gravel path broke the silence. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Only one person was brazen enough to stride into my father's garden with such smug confidence. Victor Malone, the new husband of my ex-wife, Sarah. Ethan, Victor's voice was syrupy, fake, like honey poured into the ear. Still fussing over your little flowers? Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. I kept pruning, ignoring him. These white roses were my father's legacy, planted the day I married Sarah. A day now just a bitter memory. Victor stepped closer, his shadow falling over the flower bed. I'm here to talk about the will. The reading is tomorrow, and Sarah and I want to discuss things beforehand, to keep it civilized. I stopped, turned to face him, wiping my hands on my dirt-stained apron. There's nothing to discuss, I said, my voice harsh. This is my father's house, his estate. Victor smirked, his smile dripping with contempt. Your father's estate, sure. But since Sarah was part of this family for 15 years, we think we deserve a fair share. My blood boiled. The pruning shears in my hand suddenly felt heavy. Sarah, the one who betrayed me with you, Victor. That's who you call part of the family. I growled, struggling to contain my anger. Victor waved a hand, dismissing the past. Old news, Ethan. Your father forgave her. We played golf every weekend until... He paused, feigning sorrow. The pain of losing my father cut like a knife, and Victor was rubbing salt in the wound. My father left you nothing, I said, standing tall, staring him down. He may have forgiven, but he wasn't a fool. Victor sneered, his smile icy. We'll see. Your brother Nathan seems to think differently. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. We're not just talking, Ethan. Nathan's been helpful. At Nathan's name, my heart tightened. Nathan and I had barely spoken since the funeral, when he stood with Sarah and Victor, leaving me alone. You talked to Nathan? I asked, my voice low, my grip tightening on the shoe. Oh, more than talked, Victor murmured, as if sharing a secret. He's been very cooperative. He laughed, the sound like shattering glass. This house is yours. How cute. But it's worth millions, Ethan. You think you can keep it all? Alone, in this garden, playing with your flowers? This is my father's house, I snapped, stepping toward him. He laid every brick, planted every tree, designed every room. This isn't about money. It's about legacy. Victor scoffed. Wake up, Ethan. Everything's about money. And tomorrow, when the will is read, you'll learn that the hard way. He turned to leave but paused at the garden gate. Oh, you should start packing. Sarah and I will need at least a month to renovate before moving in. As his footsteps faded, I looked down at the roses. My hands trembled, scattering dirt on the white petals. My father once said white roses symbolized new beginnings, but now I saw only red, raging anger. Victor and Sarah, who'd ruined my life, were now targeting my father's legacy. I knelt to pick up the fallen petals and noticed a corner of a small envelope peeking out from under the rosebush. My heart raced. I gently pulled it out, recognizing my father's familiar handwriting on the front. To Ethan. The envelope was damp with dew, as if it had been waiting for me to find it. I grabbed my phone and dialed Lisa, my lawyer and college friend. Lisa, it's me, I said when she answered. Victor was here. He's after Dad's estate, and mentioned Nathan. I found a letter from Dad. Lisa's voice was firm, unwavering. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Ethan. Don't worry. Your dad was smarter than they all think. She promised to bring her legal briefcase and a bottle of wine. I stood in the garden, still clutching my father's letter, my eyes fixed on the white roses swaying in Portland's gentle breeze. Victor's words echoed in my mind. About the will, Nathan. How they'd take this house. But my father's letter, with his familiar handwriting and a small key, felt like a reminder that he'd prepared something. I didn't know what yet, but I trusted him. He'd never left me alone. The sound of a car pulling up snapped me out of my thoughts. Lisa stepped out, legal briefcase in one hand, wine bottle in the other. Figured we'd need this, she said, holding up the bottle as she walked into my father's study. Lisa, with her neatly tied hair and sharp eyes, always brought a sense of calm. We'd been friends since college, and she'd never let me down. I led Lisa to the study, where the smell of old wood and ink still carried my father's presence. I placed the letter and key on the oak desk, my eyes never leaving them. You haven't opened anything else? Lisa asked, setting her briefcase down with a heavy thud. Wanted to wait for you, I replied, my voice hoarse. After what Victor said about Nathan, I wasn't sure I was ready to face my father's secrets alone. Lisa nodded, poured 2 full glasses of wine, and slid one toward me. Drink, Ethan. Your dad always had a way of making things right. I took the glass but didn't drink, my eyes glued to the letter. Victor said Nathan's helping them. Said he's very cooperative. What do you think? Lisa frowned but kept her voice steady. Don't jump to conclusions. Your dad was careful. If he left this letter, he knew someone would come for the estate. And I bet he accounted for Nathan. She pointed at the envelope. Open it, Ethan. We need to know what your dad planned. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling as I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper and the key I'd seen. I read aloud, my voice echoing my father's words. Ethan, if you're reading this, someone's after my estate. This key opens the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside is everything you need to protect what's ours. Remember what I taught you about chess. Sometimes you sacrifice a piece to save the queen. Love, Dad. Lisa sipped her wine, chuckling softly. Arthur always had a flair for drama. A shark, all teeth, and no soul. He must have meant Victor. I nodded, feeling like my father was here, guiding me. I moved to the desk, found the bottom drawer. The key fit perfectly. Clicking open. Inside was a thick manila envelope and a USB drive. I dumped the envelope's contents onto the desk. Dozens of photos, printed emails, and bank documents spilled out like a dark story. Lisa picked up a photo, her eyes narrowing. This is Victor, meeting someone in a dark parking lot. And this, she pointed to another. He's entering a lawyer's office, not mine. I scanned the bank documents, spotting suspicious transactions tied to Carter Enterprises. A printed email showed Victor trying to access the company's financial records before my father's death. Dad had them followed, I whispered, my voice full of awe. He knew what Victor was up to. Lisa nodded, grabbing the USB. And I bet this holds even more. Arthur never did anything halfway. She sat in my father's leather chair, her tone serious. I helped him set some things up, Ethan. 6 months ago, after his diagnosis, he came to me. He knew exactly how this would play out. I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. Why didn't he tell me? Lisa handed me the wine, her voice softening. Because Victor needed to show his hand first. Arthur wanted them to dig their own graves. She pointed to the USB. But before we check this, you need to know about tomorrow's will reading. Your dad added a codicil 3 days before he passed. A codicil? I asked, my heart racing. What is it? Lisa smiled, her eyes sharp as a blade. Something that'll change everything. But hold on, Ethan. Open the USB first. Your dad wanted you to see this. I took the USB, my hands trembling. The photos, emails, and documents before me were pieces of a puzzle my father had carefully arranged. Victor and Sarah might think they had the upper hand, but my father was steps ahead. I remembered the evenings he taught me chess in this room, telling me, be patient, Ethan. The strongest enemy falls if you know how to wait. I looked at Lisa, determination rising in me. All right, I said, plugging the USB into my father's computer. Let's see what Dad left us. Lisa left an hour ago, leaving me with a half-empty glass of wine and a mind full of tangled thoughts. The study's warm lamplight glowed on the old bookshelves where my father spent his afternoons, quietly reading and teaching me chess. He always said patience was the key to everything. But now, my patience was wearing thin. If Nathan had truly betrayed me, I couldn't imagine facing that truth. A sharp knock at the door cut through my thoughts. When I opened it, Nathan stood there, his wrinkled suit and dark circles under his eyes betraying sleepless nights. He clutched a briefcase, his face hesitant, as if searching for the right words. I didn't move, just crossed my arms and stared. Nathan stepped inside, set the briefcase on the desk, and sat in my father's chair. He sighed, his face weary, like he'd been through a mental battle. Guilt and regret were clear, but so was a sense of helplessness. He began explaining what happened, why he hadn't told me, why he'd stayed silent. I had to follow Dad's plan, he said, his voice choking. Dad asked me to get close to Victor and Sarah, pretend to cooperate, and gather evidence. I did this for the family, Ethan, not because I wanted to betray you. Nathan opened the briefcase and pulled out an old phone. He slid it toward me. My heart clenched as Victor's voice came through, cold and calculating. Every word was like a slap. They were planning to deceive me, exploit my father's condition, to take everything. Worse, there were vague threats about driving me insane, or arranging a small accident to settle things. A lump rose in my throat. They wanted to hurt me, I asked, my voice tight, my grip crushing the phone. Nathan nodded, his face sad. Dad found out. He told me to keep it quiet. Let Victor and Sarah expose themselves. He wanted me to help you, but not like this. He handed me a check, $500,000 that Victor had given him, to testify that our father wasn't of sound mind when he wrote the will. But Nathan didn't take it. He brought it to Dad, and followed his plan to protect the family. Dad was disappointed, Nathan said, his voice low. He started this plan when he found out. You should have seen his face. Not angry, just disappointed. I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. And you didn't tell me. I sighed, unsure how to feel. You're my brother, Nathan. You should have been on my side. He nodded, his eyes red, holding back tears. I was wrong. I abandoned you during the divorce, but I want to make it right. For you, for Dad. Nathan stood and walked to the window, gazing at the garden as if reflecting on his actions. I played a dangerous game, Ethan, but I did it for the family. I looked at him, my anger giving way to understanding. My father once said, roses need a steady hand, but don't be cruel. Maybe Nathan had done his best, in his own way. All right, I said, my voice softer. But from now on, no more secrets. Nathan nodded, a faint smile breaking through. I promise. Just then my phone buzzed. It was Lisa. Ethan, I found the codicil in the will, she said, her voice excited. Tomorrow's gonna be one hell of a day. You ready? The faint morning light filtered through the study's window, illuminating the evidence on the desk. Photos of Victor meeting shady lawyers, printed emails, bank documents, and the recording Nathan brought last night. I, Ethan Carter, sat across from Lisa, my hands flipping through the papers, my mind still reeling from Nathan's revelations. My brother hadn't betrayed me. He'd been playing a dangerous chess game under my father's plan, gathering evidence to expose Victor and Sarah. But Victor's words haunted me. This house is worth millions. You'll learn that the hard way. Today at the will reading, I'd find out who'd learn the lesson. Lisa, her hair neatly tied and eyes sharp, placed the USB from my father's drawer on the desk. We need to check this before the will reading starts, she said, her voice firm. Arthur didn't leave anything pointless. Nathan sat beside me, looking less exhausted than last night, as if reconciling with me had lifted a weight. He pulled a transcript from his briefcase and handed it to me, his eyes urging me to understand what was coming. As I skimmed the paper, anger flared again. It was a wire transfer record, with a message from Victor. Need details on the will. Money's no object. I crumpled the paper, feeling betrayed and insulted. He thought he could buy everything. Lisa smiled, but it was cold and sharp. She plugged the USB into my father's computer, and the screen lit up with a video. Victor appeared in a hospital, talking to a nurse. His voice was calculated. I need to know what Carter wrote in his will. I'll pay double if you're quick. Nathan and I sat silent, struck by the ruthlessness in his words. He was manipulating everything, even as my father lay dying. Rage surged, my fists clenched, but I stayed calm. Nathan put a hand on my shoulder, quietly saying my father knew everything. Lisa fast-forwarded the video and pointed to a photo on the screen. It showed Nathan meeting Victor 3 weeks before my father's death. My heart tightened at Nathan's expression, but relief came with the next photo. Nathan left the meeting, holding a check. Lisa explained that Nathan kept it as evidence and took it straight to Dad. That's when my father acted fast. Looking at Nathan, guilt hit me for doubting him. He'd risked more than I realized. As my father taught, roses need a steady hand, but don't be cruel. Nathan had done just that, protecting the family his way. My phone buzzed, Victor's name on the screen. Lisa signaled to put it on speaker. His voice dripped with smugness, trying to convince me I couldn't keep the house, that I wasn't strong enough to hold on to what my father left. But I fired back, reminding him this was my father's house, and no one had the right to take it. Victor laughed, the sound cutting into my mind. He thought he'd already won, but I knew things weren't as he believed. When the call ended, Lisa looked at me with resolve. He just dug his hole deeper. And tomorrow we'll push him in. She pulled out a sealed envelope, the codicil to my father's will. It'll play out like Victor and Sarah think they've won. They'll split the estate, the house, everything. But when they accept the will, this codicil kicks in. Lisa tapped the envelope. The codicil exposes everything. Photos, videos, bribes, all their manipulation and fraud will go public. I stared at Lisa, amazed by my father's foresight. He'd let Victor and Sarah think they'd won, only to expose them. Dad made them think they had it so they'd reveal themselves? I said, stunned by the plan's brilliance. Exactly. Lisa grinned, her eyes gleaming with victory. The real will leaves everything to you, with a trust for Nathan. Victor and Sarah get nothing but public humiliation. Nathan laughed, shaking his head. Dad always played the long game. He stood, looking at me seriously. One more thing, Ethan. I want to meet you tonight, before the will reading. There's something you need to know. I nodded, curiosity swirling. All right, come by any time. Looking out at the garden, the white roses sparkled in the early sunlight, and a strange calm settled over me. My father's words echoed. Be patient, Ethan. The strongest enemy falls. Victor and Sarah might be smug, but they didn't know my father had set a trap, and now I, Lisa, and Nathan held the trigger. The next morning, I, Ethan Carter, stood in my father's study on the outskirts of Portland, my eyes scanning the old bookshelves and oak desk where he once sat. Today was the will reading, and I felt his presence in every corner, as if he were watching. The photos, emails, recordings, and videos we reviewed this morning sat in Lisa's legal briefcase, ready for the final blow. Victor's threat echoed. You'll learn that the hard way. Today I'd show him who'd learn the lesson. Lisa stood behind the desk, adjusting her blazer, her face calm but eyes sharp as a blade. Nathan walked in, nodding to me, then whispers. Victor and Sarah are outside. They've got a whole film crew, like it's an Oscar announcement. I frowned. Film crew? For what? Nathan smirked. To flaunt their victory. Victor's rehearsing his acceptance speech. He clapped my shoulder. Ready? I nodded, determination surging. Everything was set. All that remained was executing the plan my father laid out. Lisa stood beside me, her eyes blazing with certainty. Everything's ready, she said, her voice confident. Just do it like Arthur wanted. Noise from the hallway grew louder. Victor's smug voice carrying, We'll replace that chandelier. The old one's so outdated. I clenched my jaw, but Lisa whispered, Let them gloat. They'll fall harder when they don't see it coming. I stayed silent, a heavy feeling rising. The door swung open, and Victor strode in, his face as smug as ever. He wore an expensive suit, his smile hiding none of his arrogance. Sarah followed, her face poised but her eyes briefly uneasy before shifting to confidence. The film crew trailed, adjusting lights and cameras, turning the room into a movie set. Victor sat, legs crossed, eyeing me like I was the loser. Sarah sat beside him, clutching his hand. The ceremony began, and Lisa stood, her voice commanding the room. I'm Lisa, Arthur Carter's attorney. Today I'll read his final will and related documents. She opened a large envelope, her eyes scanning the faces, everyone ready. Victor practically leapt from his chair, his voice eager. Sarah gripped his hand, her eyes gleaming, as if she saw millions already. Lisa began reading the will, her voice steady and professional. She listed my father's assets, and when my share came up, I stayed silent, staring at Victor. He couldn't hide his glee, but it didn't last. Lisa paused, her tone sharpening. However, she said, there's a codicil added 3 days before Mr. Carter's passing. Victor's smile froze, his eyes shifting, sensing something wrong. Lisa continued, unwavering. This codicil mandates that anyone inheriting must face a full investigation into financial irregularities in the months before Mr. Carter's death. The room went silent, tension thick enough to hear heartbeats. The cameras turned to Victor, but he wasn't smiling. Lisa produced a stack of photos and documents, each piece like a blade slicing through his facade. Perhaps these will clarify, she said, sliding the evidence toward him. Victor panicked, snatching a photo, his face pale, eyes wide, darting between me and Lisa, unable to believe what was happening. Sarah sat frozen, gripping him, her face white, speechless. Nathan stood from the corner, his voice low and commanding. Our father prepared everything, including recordings of you planning to contest the will with false claims about his mental state. Victor spun to Sarah, yelling, Turn off the cameras, but Sarah just sat, exhausted, her eyes lost. I stood, stepping toward Victor, my voice calm but firm. No, I said, keep them rolling. You wanted this moment recorded, right? Let the world see it all. Victor roared, frantic, pointing at me. You can't do this. He turned to Sarah, begging for help, but she just bowed her head, hands shaking. Lisa pressed on, her voice icy. The codicil is clear. Any attempt to claim the estate triggers the public release of all this evidence to the authorities. You have a choice. Victor screamed, his voice breaking. What choice? You've trapped us. But I just stared coldly, silent. No, I said again. You trapped yourselves. Every scheme led to this moment. Victor turned to Nathan, face red with rage. This is your fault. You were supposed to help us. Nathan shrugged, his voice like frost. I helped. Just not you. Sarah jumped up, frantic. Victor, do something. But Victor stood frozen, hands trembling, eyes glazed as he stared at the photos of himself in a rival lawyer's office, holding Carter Enterprises' confidential documents. Suddenly, a voice boomed from the camera's screen. It was my father, Arthur, in a video Lisa had just played. His frail but resolute face filled the screen. If you're watching this, you've shown your true colors. Just as I predicted. Greed is a poor teacher, but its consequences are excellent students. Victor stumbled back, his face ashen, retreating as if he couldn't bear. Sarah covered her face, mascara streaking black. Turn it off, she screamed. But the cameras kept rolling, caught in the drama's grip. Lisa stood tall, her voice like thunder. The police are waiting in the lobby to discuss the embezzlement evidence. I suggest you cooperate. It might lessen your sentence. The door opened, and 2 officers stepped in, swiftly approaching Victor. He struggled but couldn't break free. Sarah was led away, still muttering apologies, but I didn't look at her. My eyes were on the white roses in the garden, where my father taught me about patience and justice. He'd orchestrated everything, not just to protect his legacy, but to teach Victor and Sarah a final lesson in fairness. As they were escorted out, cameras still running, I looked at Lisa and Nathan. Dad did it, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Lisa nodded, a victorious smile, and we helped him finish it. After Lisa left the room, I sat alone with Nathan, a hollow feeling filling the space. He stood by the desk, running his hand over a family photo from when I was a kid, in my father's garden. The room still held tension, but maybe it was time for things to settle. Nathan chuckled softly, looking at me with understanding. Victor couldn't keep his cool anymore, he said, as if watching a scripted play. I nodded. The victory felt strange, not what I'd imagined. The truth was, my father had planned every detail long ago, from the evidence to the will's codicil. He hadn't just prepared to protect the family estate. He wanted to teach the greedy a profound lesson. Now everything was becoming clear. Like pieces of a map, each detail revealed itself, leaving me in awe. My father didn't just see the truth. He put himself in his enemy's shoes, waiting for them to fall into his trap. I couldn't help but admire his calm and wisdom. When Detective Harris walked in, I realized my father's efforts went beyond the will. He'd contacted the police 3 months earlier, providing enough evidence about Victor, or rather Michael Reed, the con man who'd targeted our family. This new information only deepened my shock. My father had known about Reed for a while, even when Nathan brought the $500,000 check, unsurprised. He'd anticipated every move, patiently waiting for the right moment to expose everything. Yet this truth didn't bring me joy. Victor and Sarah, who once thought they could control everything, now faced deserved punishment. But this victory couldn't erase the pain of losing my father. He hadn't just protected the family. He wanted us to learn about patience, about facing adversity without losing ourselves. Lisa returned after handling the reporters outside. She was exhausted but still carried the confidence of a warrior post-battle. Though I didn't want this to become a media circus, I couldn't deny this victory was a release for us all. Thanks to Lisa and Nathan, who stood by me through what seemed insurmountable, the police ensured Reed wouldn't return. Deep down, I knew my father had prepared for all this. He didn't just want justice. He wanted our family to stand strong, unbowed by anyone's greed. After the will reading, I, Ethan Carter, returned to my father's garden on the outskirts of Portland, where the white roses still swayed gently in the breeze. The wind carried the dampness of rain, but sunlight broke through the clouds, lighting the flower bed like a reminder of resilience. Victor or Michael Reed and Sarah had been exposed. My father's plan had triumphed, but a void remained in me. Justice was served, but the pain of losing my father, and years of betrayal, by Sarah lingered. I needed to move forward, and this garden, where my father taught me about roses and patience, seemed like the place to start. I stepped into the small shed beside the garden, where my father used to fix tools and store mementos. The smell of damp wood and machine oil brought back afternoons, helping him sharpen blades or repaint the fence. I pulled a dusty old wooden box from a high shelf, untouched for years. Opening it, I found a small envelope. My father's handwriting clear. To Ethan. My heart pounded. I sat on the shed floor, opened the envelope, and found a letter with legal documents. I read the letter, my father's voice echoing. Ethan, if you found this, you've passed the test. I know you're stronger than you think. The lot next to your old flower shop is yours, with the Carter Gardens trademark registered. Make it a place where roses bloom, like our garden. Don't let pain harden you. Bloom again, son. Love, Dad. I clutched the letter, tears welling. My father hadn't just protected the estate. He'd left a future, a chance to rebuild from the ashes of my divorce and pain. The documents were a deed for the lot and a trust account with enough to start Carter Gardens. He'd planned everything, even knowing he was leaving. I recalled the days after the divorce, when I nearly gave up gardening, locking the flower shop and drowning in self-blame. Sarah had left, Victor had stolen my trust, and I thought I had nothing left. But my father, even in illness, believed in me. He'd planted seeds of hope, and now I had to make them bloom. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. Lisa called, her voice excited. Ethan, where are you? Nathan and I just drafted plans for Carter Gardens. We're thinking a greenhouse and a shop showcasing white roses, like your dad's garden. I laughed, feeling lighter for the first time that day. You're fast, Lisa. I'm in the shed. Just found a letter from Dad. He left the lot for Carter Gardens. Lisa cheered. Arthur was a genius. I'll handle the legal stuff. Permits. Contracts. Nathan's on board for finances and management. You just do what you do best. Make roses bloom. Thanks, Lisa, I said, sincere. And thanks for always being there. That's what best friends do, she replied, hanging up, leaving me with the letter. I stepped into the garden, carrying the wooden box. Nathan was there, checking the rose bed, ensuring it was perfect. Find something in the shed, he asked, eyes curious. Dad's letter, I said, showing him, and papers for Carter Gardens. He wanted me to expand the flower shop, start over. Nathan read the letter, his eyes softening. Dad always knew the way. He clapped my shoulder. We'll make it happen, Ethan, together. As Nathan left to prepare for a meeting with Lisa, a neighbor stepped into the garden. Mrs. Miller, my father's retired secretary from Carter Enterprises, carried a tray of cookies. Heard about the case in the news, she said, her voice warm. Arthur would be so proud. Ethan, thanks, I replied, inviting her to sit on the wooden bench. I just wish you were here. Mrs. Miller smiled, her eyes distant. You know, Arthur always talked about you. He said you had a gardener's hands, but a warrior's heart. He knew you'd overcome anything, even when you didn't believe it yourself. Her words were like a cool breeze, easing some of my self-blame. I'd let the divorce's pain cloud my faith, but my father, and Mrs. Miller, saw what I couldn't. Thank you, I said, my voice thick. That means a lot. Mrs. Miller left, leaving me with the garden and the letter. I looked at the white roses, feeling connected to my father, Nathan, and Lisa. He hadn't just left an estate, but a legacy, love, patience, and hope. A month after the will reading, I, Ethan Carter, stood in a Portland courtroom for the preliminary trial of Victor, or Michael Reed, and Sarah. Victor got life in prison for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to harm, his eyes empty as he was led away. Sarah, cooperating with police, got 15 years. As she passed me, she paused, her voice shaky. Ethan, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I met her eyes, no longer angry. Sarah, you chose your path, I said. Calm. Live with it. She bowed her head and left, and I felt a strange relief, not victory but release. Justice was done, and I didn't need to hold on to the pain. I returned to my father's garden, where Lisa and Nathan waited. We held a small ceremony to honor him, placing a wooden plaque by the white roses, engraved. For Ethan, who taught me the strongest flowers grow from broken places. My father's words, from the shed letter, now guided me. Lisa hugged me, her smile radiant. Carter Gardens will be yours and Arthur's legacy, she said. Nathan nodded, adding, we start building next week. Dad would be proud. I knelt, planting the first white roses on the new lot for Carter Gardens. The soil was soft under my hands, like a promise of the future. I held my father's final letter, his handwriting echoing, bloom again, son. I looked at the garden, feeling his legacy, not just an estate, but love, patience, and hope. Under Portland's sunset, I stood, ready for a new journey, knowing my father was with me in every white rose. The story asterisk. My wife's new husband demanded her share of my father's estate. But my lawyer had other plans asterisk, which I rewrote. Set in Portland, Oregon, is not just a tale of justice and healing, but also reflects the values and challenges of life in the U.S. today. Through Ethan Carter's journey, the story emphasizes the importance of patience, family unity, and standing up for what's precious against greed, real issues in modern American society, where estate disputes and family loyalty are often tested by personal gain. Specifically, Ethan's confrontation with Victor Malone, real name Michael Reed, and Sarah, who schemed to seize his father's legacy, mirrors the reality of complex estate litigation in the U.S., where greed can lead to fraud, like Victor's embezzlement and bribery with Carter Enterprises. Arthur Carter's clever plan, using a codicil in photos, videos, recordings, to expose victims, highlights the need for preparation and strategic thinking, a vital lesson in American society, where the legal system demands clear evidence and tight plans. Nathan's role, acting as a spy to protect his brother, underscores the value of family unity, precious in American culture, where family ties are often strained by distance or personal conflicts. Finally, Ethan's discovery of the letter in the shed, and the start of Carter Gardens, embodied resilience and renewal, reflecting America's culture of overcoming adversity to rebuild, as many Americans launch startups or rediscover passion after setbacks. Subscribe to the channel to follow Ethan's journey and Carter Gardens, and explore more stories of justice and hope. Thanks for joining us. See you in the next video.